Right, so this is the second video for your review for your practice STAAR test. And first thing that we're learning today or reviewing today is how to solve equations. So I'm not going to go through the entire problem and have you solve it by hand, because for your test day, you are allowed to use the calculator, decimals. And so I'm going to show you how to do this in decimals. I'm going to remind you because I've already shown you this in class. So here the directions are: type the left side in decimals. This is the left side. And then type the right side in decimals. This is the right side. And then the answer is going to be the x value of the point where they intersect. So first I'm going to type this part in decimals, the left side: 4x minus 2, 3x plus 4. And then I'm going to type the right side: negative 3x plus 4 minus 6 on the second line. Negative 3x plus 4 minus 6. Okay, so I've got created two different lines. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, try to find the point where they intersect. I'm going to click that point where they intersect. And my answer is only the x value on that point. So remember, the x value is the first number. So my answer is 6. So here, x equals 6. Okay, you don't have to know how to solve the equation. You do have to know it for next year. But for your test, you just remember how to use decimals and you should be fine on your test. There's a lot of questions. Okay. One more just to show you how you would do it if your answer choices are decimals or fractions, because decimals only gives you the decimal answer, doesn't give you the fraction. So same thing though, you're gonna type the left side first. So 2x plus 4 minus 6x. And on the second line, I'm gonna graph the right side. 2 parentheses, negative 5x plus 1. Okay, so those are my two lines. I'm gonna find the point where they intersect and I'm gonna click on it. And if you notice, those are decimals, but my answer choices are fractions. So what you would have to do, you would have to type each answer choice until you find the one that matches. I'm gonna give you the answer and I'm gonna show you. Answer is 1/3. If you type that answer 1/3 in decimals, you can see that that is the same decimal that I had right here. Oh, that's actually negative, so that should be negative 1/3. So let's fix that. So not that one, this negative 1/3. Okay, so you just make sure that, remember that if it gives you a decimal, just type your answer choices, make sure it matches. Okay, so pause this video, and for your day 115 practice, I want you to try numbers 4 and 7. All right, so second thing we are going to review is rate of change, which is also known as slope. Okay, so remember, rate of change and slope mean the same thing. Yesterday we reviewed that slope is the letter M. Remember, yesterday we did equations. We talked about slope being the number next to the x. It's represented by the letter M. And so today what we're doing, we are going to practice how to find the slope from tables, from points, and from graphs. Yesterday was just identifying it from an equation. Today we have to solve for it from those other representations. Okay, so right here is saying find the rate of change for the table. Remember, rate of change means slope, and your slope formula is this one right here. So in your formula chart, the day of your test, it's not going to say rate of change. On the formula, it says slope. You have to remember that means the same thing. So I'm going to pick 2 points from my table and I'm going to plug them into my equation. So here are my x's. That means all these numbers on the left side are x values. So this is x1, this is x2. Those are my y values. All the numbers on the right side are y values. So this is y1 and this is y2. So I'm going to take this equation and I'm going to start replacing those letters with those numbers. So first I'm taking y2 and this is y2, 25. And there's a minus in between. And now I'm taking y1. Here's y1, 12. There's a line underneath, division. And then on the bottom, I have x2, which is -1, minus x1, which is this one, -2. Okay, so notice, be really careful here. Notice that I kept the minus that's right there in the middle of my formula, right here. But I also have to keep the negative that's from my number. So I have double negative here. A lot of students forget that. Be careful with the negatives. So once you have this, you can already type it straight into decimals and it will give you the answer for the slope. So we're going to type this in decimals, just like I have it right here in my screen. So first, I'm going to set up my fraction in decimals by typing the division symbol. And now I can type my numbers that I have on top, 25 minus 12. And on the bottom, I have -1 minus -2. -1 minus -2. My answer is 13. So here my answer is 13. And I'm done. That's my slope. Did I write 130? I was thinking of fraction. Sorry, 13. Okay, 13. So what I was going to say, that's why I wrote a fraction in there, is that if your answer is ever a decimal, then you would just change it to a fraction. For example, if your answer was 0.4, remember that you can always change it to a fraction by clicking the circle. Okay. From points, it is the exact same thing. X1, Y1, because remember, a point has both an X and a Y. This is the second point, so then this one is X2, and this one is Y2, and you would do the exact same thing I did on that previous example. My formula is this one. So my Y2 is -10 minus my Y1 is 6. Bottom, X2 is 4 minus, and then X1 is 2. Okay, then you would type this in decimals, just like I showed you earlier. And when you type that in decimals, you get, let's see, you get -8. Okay. And then slope from a graph. So slope from a graph, if you remember the equation is a little bit different. We do rise over run. So you pick 2 points, just like we need to find slope up here. We have 2 points. I gotta pick 2 points from this green points that I have in here. If they don't mark the points for you, remember they have to be perfect points, meaning that they have to intersect in the corner of a box. So all those are perfect. So I'm just gonna choose 2 points. I'm gonna choose this one and I'm gonna choose this one. Doesn't matter which ones you choose. So you start with one of the points, doesn't matter which one. I'm gonna start with this one and I'm gonna move towards my second point. So I'm just gonna count how many units I go up and then over. So I rise 1, 2, 3. So my rise is 3. And then starting from that same point where I left off, I'm gonna start moving to the right. 1, 2, 3. So I move 3 to the right, and then you just divide. 3 divided by 3 equals 1. So my slope for this line is 1. Okay. If you have a hard time finding slope with rise over run, especially whenever you have scales that are not the same. Like in this one, it was really easy to count because you can see that each box is only worth 1, but sometimes each box is not worth, let me see. So here it was worth 1, here it was worth 2. Yeah, so see, I made a mistake here. So on this one, I went up 3, that was right, but I didn't check my x-axis. My x-axis, each box is worth 2. So I moved over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so then I have to divide 3 divided by 6 is 1/2. So if you're like me, that you did not check or you do not check your axes to make sure that each box is worth 1, then what I suggest is you using the formula so that you don't mess up like I did right now in the previous example. So you would still pick 2 points and then you would just find the coordinates. 2 and 80 is one of them, 2 comma 80. And then the other one is right here on the 4. I went up to 160, 4 comma 160. And so then you can do the x1, y1 and the x2, y2 to find your slope. So formula of y2 is 160 minus y1 is 80 over x2 is 4 minus x1 is 2. We type this into decimals and that gives me 40. And if you hate the formula, then just be really careful to check your axes to make sure that you know how much each square is worth. So I'm gonna do this one more time. This time I'm gonna do the formula so I can show you both methods. So if I'm using rise over run, and I'm gonna show you it doesn't matter which 2 points I decide to use. I'm gonna use this one and this one. And I'm gonna use rise over run. So now this time I have to be really careful. I have to check my y-axis to see how many I go up. Go up 1 unit, but if you notice, each square here is worth 80. It's going up by 80, 80, 160, 240, 320. So in reality, I didn't go up 1, I went up 80. Okay, now I'm gonna move to the right to reach my second point. Looks like I moved 1 unit, but if you notice down here on the x-axis, each box is worth 2. So I ran 2 to the right. And so if I divide 80 divided by 2, I get 40. So I get the same answer. Doesn't matter if you use the formula or if you use rise over run. Just make sure you do everything correct. Also, one more thing from life scenarios is whenever they give you a graph that's associated with something in real life. For example, in this one, they're giving me a graph that's comparing distance with time. So that's like a real life scenario. So the way that you would write your answer for those, or the way that you would see your answers in your test would be 40. And then they would say miles per hour. So it's always y first and then xy per x. Also, one more thing that you need to be really, really careful if you decide to use rise over run is be careful on the way you move because that determines your sign, if your line is positive or if it's negative. So here, they already marked 2 points for me, this one and this one, so I can use those. And so if I'm going to use my formula rise over run, I'm gonna start with this lowest point and I'm gonna count how many I go up. So I go up 1, each one is worth 1, 2, 3, so I go up 3. And then if I check the x-axis down here, each box is worth 10. If you notice here's a 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So each little box is worth 10. I'm gonna move to the left. 1, so that's 10, 20, 30. So I move 30. And notice that I moved to the left, and because I'm moving to the left, I'm moving to the negatives. So it's negative 30. So now we divide 3 divided by negative 30 gives you negative 130. And so your answer is negative, and you should be able to tell by looking at your graph, it's moving down. From the left to the right is going down. So just be really careful. If you're choosing to use rise over run, 2 things. Make sure you check how much each box is worth. And also make sure you remember that if you move left, it's a negative, or if you move down, that's a negative. So be really careful with those 2 things. Okay, so now you're going to pause this video and you are going to try 3 problems that are about slope, numbers 9, 10, and 11 for your practice 115. All right, next thing that we are going to review is how to use decimals to match graphs and tables. So a lot of the questions on the STAAR test can be answered using decimals if you know how to graph and pull up tables in decimals. So this one, number 1, says which graph best represents this equation. So negative x squared plus xx minus 1. We're just going to graph this into decimals, and we're just going to match it to the right answer. Negative x squared plus 6 minus 1. So here's my graph. Here are my answer choices. It is a little bit hard to determine, but we can see that it's opening down. So definitely not B or C because they're opening up. So I'm between A and D. You notice they look very similar, but if we pay attention to the highest point, then we should be fine. So here, my vertex is at 3, 8. Zoom in just to show you. You have a hard time noticing that. Just zoom in, the highest point right here, 5, 6, 7, 8, which is the 8, the top of my graph is at the 8, and so I'm looking for that on my answer choices. This one, top of my graph, is at the 8, so that's my answer. This one was at the 10. So when you're graphing, sometimes the graphs look very, very similar. Just make sure you look at key points, look at different points, where it's across the x-axis, where it's the maximum, all those things to help you cancel answers and get to the right one. Okay. Bad thing about decimals, one more time, is that you cannot graph it unless you have y by itself. And this equation right here, I cannot graph it in decimals. It is not going to appear on decimals. So then we have to solve for y. Then we can use decimals. So I'm going to copy that equation right over here. I'm going to draw a line through the equal sign, and I need to get y by itself. So to get y by itself, I have to get rid of this negative 5, and I do that with division. So I divide the negative 5 on every single number, every single term. Once I do that, negative 5 divided by negative 5 is 1. So I have 1y. Negative 6 divided by negative 5 gives me a decimal. So I'm going to keep it as a fraction. It's positive 6 over 5. And then positive 15 divided by negative 5 gives me negative 3. So now I have y by itself. Now I can graph this in decimals. 6 over 5x minus 3. So once you have it set equal to, you don't have to put the y equals unless you want to, but I have graphed it already. And I'm trying to match it to my graphs over here. I can see that my graph crosses the x-axis or the y-axis at negative 3 and at 2.5 on the x-axis. So I'm going to check those points on my graphs. Negative 3 on the y. So this is the y. Not negative 3, so not it. This one's negative 3. This one could be. This one's positive 3, so not it. This one's negative 3. So I'm between B and C. And if you look at my graph, it's going up. So then it has to be this one is going up. C. Sometimes you also have to match tables. And so very, very easy, same thing. I'm gonna do this one right here first. It says which function represents the same relationship. So what we do here is we graph option by option until we find the right one. So I'm gonna graph A. You could type all this into decimals or just starting from the equal sign. After the equal sign, it doesn't matter. So I'm just gonna copy. I'm just gonna type this into decimals. 15, 5/6 raised to the x power. Raised to the x power. And so here's my graph. You can see that it is going down and it intersects right here, the y-axis at 15. So I'm gonna look for that in my, if I were graphing, I would look for that. Here I want a table. So let's look at the table instead. So settings, table, and then I'm looking for my points that are here on my screen. So I want -2 with 12.5, not it. So that cancels. So let's try the next one. 18, 6/5 to 8 powers. I'm gonna fix it here. 18, 6/5. So now I'm looking, -2 is with 12.5, yes. -1 is with 15, yes. 0 is with 18, yes. 1 is with 21.6, yes. And then 2 with 25.92, yes. So my answer is B. I check every single point because on the STAAR test, they are very, very tricky. And they will put the first 4 points matching, and then the last one, they'll change it up. And then you'll get the wrong answer. So make sure you check every single point, make sure all of them are on there before you mark that as the right answer. Make sure you check all of them. Okay. And then this one will be the same thing based on the table, which function models this situation. Same exact thing. The only thing you have to remember is that decimals doesn't recognize any letter that is not X and Y. So because I don't have X and Y here, remember this is Y. I'm going to change all those letters to X's. And so now it's ready to type in decimals. Y equals, and you type -3x plus 24. See if they match. If not, move on to the next one. So very, very easy. One more thing. I was matching equations to graphs and also equations to tables. Now we are going to look at one more example that you could still do in decimals. So this one, instead of giving you a table, they're giving you 2 points, but it's the exact same thing. So a lot of students, because they don't see it written in a table format, they don't know what to do. Very easy. They're giving me 2 points. This is X, this is Y. This is X, this is Y. So really, they're just giving you 2 points from the table. They just took those points from the table. -4 should be with 2, and 12 should be with 6. And so now this problem's become just like this one, where we're just graphing each answer choice until we find both points. Okay, so I'm not gonna do this one, but I just wanted to show you that even if they only give you points, it's the same thing as if they're giving you a table. So you are going to be trying these numbers, matching graphs using decimals. So try those, pause this video, and then we'll continue with the next topic. Actually, that's the end. That's all we're doing today. That's a short unit. Okay, so now you're going to make sure that you finish this assignment entirely by the end of today because the assignment closes today.